It was just another ordinary morning at the county hospital. Doctors rushed through the corridors, nurses checked charts, and patients rested quietly in their rooms. No one expected anything out of the ordinary. But everything changed in an instant. At exactly 9:37 a.m., the sliding doors opened slowly, and in walked a large, muddy German shepherd. Alone, unleashed, unaccompanied. Everyone stopped. Nurses froze mid-step. A child in the waiting area gasped. Security guards reached for their radios but didn't move forward, because the dog wasn't just walking in. He was carrying something in his mouth, something wrapped in a soft pink blanket, and it was moving. Gasps echoed across the hallway. A doctor dropped his clipboard. Someone whispered, "Is that baby?" In that frozen moment, the hospital turned into a scene no one would ever forget, and what happened next would shock everyone and inspire the world. Just hours earlier, before the dog stepped into that hospital, he had no name, no collar, no home. Locals in the nearby town had seen him wandering the streets for weeks. They called him Ghost because he always appeared and disappeared quietly, never begging, never barking, just moving like he had a mission nobody understood. That morning, a terrible storm had rolled through the area. Roads were flooded. Power lines were down. Emergency services were stretched thin. People stayed indoors, sheltering their families. But Ghost was on the move, covered in mud, soaked by rain. He moved with purpose through side streets and back alleys, as if following a path only he could see. At 7:12 a.m., a 911 call had come in from a panicked young woman. Her name was Angela. She was trapped inside her crumbling apartment building with her newborn baby. The storm had caused part of the ceiling to collapse. Water was pouring in. The door was jammed shut, and her phone was losing battery. The last thing the operator heard before the call cut off was a baby crying and a distant dog bark. That was the last anyone heard from Angela. And while the emergency responders were delayed due to the storm, something incredible was already in motion. Ghost had heard that baby's cry. No one knows how. No one knows why. But that sound had stirred something deep inside him. Just a block away from a broken apartment building, Ghost stood still in the pouring rain. Then, without warning, he darted toward the wreckage. Witnesses later said they saw a dog leaping over a collapsed fence and slipping through a narrow gap in the bricks. Inside the apartment, Angela lay unconscious from debris falling on her shoulder. The baby, just days old, was swaddled in a thin pink blanket, crying from hunger and cold. That's when Ghost appeared. He sniffed around the room, nosed the baby gently, and then very carefully took the blanket in his mouth. And he walked out. Neighbors were too shocked to react. They simply watched in disbelief as a large German shepherd emerged from the ruined building, carrying a baby. He didn't wait for help. He didn't look back. He knew exactly where he was going, straight toward the hospital. And with every step, people stopped and stared. Some followed. Others filmed. But no one dared interrupt him. It was as if everyone instinctively knew this dog was on a mission, and it was more important than anything they'd ever seen before. By the time Ghost reached the hospital doors, the crowd behind him had grown. And the moment he stepped into that hospital lobby, everything changed. The hospital lobby was bustling that morning. A paramedic wheeled in an elderly man. A child was crying over a scraped knee. A nurse shouted for a gurney. But the moment that muddy German shepherd stepped inside, silence fell like a thick curtain. Ghost's paws left wet prints on the polished tile floor. He didn't bark. He didn't hesitate. He walked straight ahead, the bundle of pink still firmly gripped in his mouth. The tiny blanket shifted slightly, enough for a nurse to see a small hand twitch beneath the folds. Someone screamed, "That's a baby!" Gasps. Stunned silence. Then chaos. Two nurses rushed forward, carefully kneeling. "Easy, boy. It's okay?" One whispered, her hands trembling. Ghost froze for a moment. His ears perked up as if deciding whether they were friends or threats. Then, gently, he lowered the baby to the ground. The child let out a soft cry. Immediately, the nurses scooped the baby up and ran toward the ER. Doctors swarmed in. One ordered an incubator. Another barked vitals. A third called for a pediatrician. The baby's skin was pale, but she was breathing. Cold, hungry, but alive. In the middle of the storm-ravaged morning, a miracle had arrived at their doorstep. And Ghost? He just stood there, soaked, silent, and still, his eyes locked on the baby as she disappeared into the back hallway. A nurse tried to approach him, offering food, but he backed away slowly, his body tense. Not aggressive, just wary, guarded. That's when the hospital's head of security, David Ramos, arrived. David was a military veteran, calm, observant. He had seen dogs do incredible things in war zones, but nothing like this. He stepped forward, crouched low, and held out his hand. "You brought her here, didn't you?" he said softly. Ghost sniffed his hand and, after a long pause, allowed David to stroke his muddy fur. The moment was surreal. Nurses wiped tears from their eyes. Patients leaned out of their rooms to watch. Phones were recording. The story had already begun spreading on social media, with photos of the heroic dog under hashtags like #MiracleDog and #GuardianAngel. Inside the ER, doctors stabilized the baby. She was suffering from mild hypothermia and dehydration, but miraculously had no serious injuries. They couldn't find any ID or clue to her identity until someone remembered the 911 call from earlier that morning. They quickly linked the baby to Angela, the young woman trapped in the collapsed building. An ambulance was dispatched immediately, and still, Ghost waited near the door, eyes fixed on the hall where the baby had gone. He didn't leave. He didn't move. It was as if he wasn't finished yet. Because for Ghost, this wasn't just about delivering the baby. It was about making sure she was safe. And something told everyone watching that he wouldn't leave until he was absolutely sure of that. Back at the apartment, first responders worked quickly. The storm had weakened the structure, but firefighters managed to pry open the broken doorway. Inside, they found Angela, barely conscious, pinned under debris but alive. She was immediately rushed to the same hospital where her baby now rested, unaware that a silent hero had already delivered her child to safety. When Angela woke up hours later, her first question wasn't, "Where am I?" or "Am I okay?" It was, "My baby, where is she?" A nurse smiled. "She's safe, thanks to a dog." Angela blinked in confusion. "A dog?" That's when they told her the full story. Tears streamed down her face as she heard how the German Shepherd had carried her baby across flooded streets, dodged traffic, and brought her all the way to the hospital, alone. She remembered seeing the dog once before. He had appeared outside her building 2 days ago, just watching. At the time, she thought he was just another stray. But now she wasn't so sure. Meanwhile, David Ramos, the head of hospital security, had been digging into Ghost's background. He checked with local shelters, vet offices, even police records, anything to identify the dog. But no one knew where he came from. No missing dog reports matched his appearance. No microchip. No collar. Nothing. It was as if he had appeared out of nowhere. News of mysterious dogs spread quickly. Local TV stations arrived. Reporters stood outside the hospital. Photos of Ghost soaked in rain with the pink blanket still between his teeth went viral. Celebrities tweeted about him. Animal rescue groups offered to adopt him. But Ghost didn't seem interested in fame or food. He still sat near the ER hallway, tail still, eyes alert, waiting for something. That something finally happened when Angela, bandaged and weak, was wheeled into the neonatal unit to see her daughter. The nurse pushed her slowly down the hall, and Ghost noticed. He stood, his ears perked up. For the first time, he moved closer, but not to Angela, to the baby. He sniffed the air and let out a low, quiet whine. Angela reached out, her hand trembling. "Hey, boy, you brought her back to me, didn't you?" Ghost stepped forward, inch by inch. Then, in a move that melted every heart watching, he gently placed his head in Angela's lap. She broke down crying. The hospital staff, hardened professionals used to trauma and tragedy, watched in complete silence, overwhelmed by the quiet power of the moment. This wasn't just a stray dog anymore. This was a guardian, a protector, a miracle. From that day, the staff stopped calling him Ghost. He was now known as Hope, because that's what he had carried into the hospital that day. Hope wrapped in a pink blanket. After the emotional reunion, everyone expected Hope, the dog, would carry the baby through a storm to rest, eat, or at least sleep. But he didn't. He remained close to Angela in her daughter's room, lying quietly in the hallway, as if standing guard. Hospital staff tried offering food and blankets. He accepted them politely, but never left the spot. He wouldn't sleep unless the baby was asleep. And whenever she cried, Hope's ears would twitch. He would rise to his feet, tail wagging low, and inch closer until the baby calmed down. It was like he could feel her distress, like they were connected. A pediatric nurse named Clara, who had been working in hospitals for 20 years, whispered one night, "I've never seen anything like this. It's as if that baby is his." Doctors agreed that the baby, now named Lily by her mother, was recovering faster than expected. Despite the trauma, her vitals stabilized within 2 days. Angela, too, was gaining strength both physically and emotionally. And a big part of that strength came from the silent comfort Hope brought simply by being near. Still, there were questions. Why had the dog gone into that building? How did he know a baby was in trouble? Why didn't he run when people approached? Angela offered the only explanation that seemed to make sense. "I think he chose her," she said one morning, brushing a strand of hair from Lily's forehead. "I think he heard her cry and just couldn't turn away." Meanwhile, the outside world couldn't get enough of the story. News vans lined the parking lot. A major news network called it "The Miracle at Mercy Hospital." Offers poured in: free vet care, dog food donations, even a custom-built doghouse from a carpenter in another state. Animal behaviorists from around the country wanted to study Hope. But David, the head of security, had a different idea. "He doesn't need cameras or studies," he told the media firmly. "He needs a family." And that family, clearly, was already forming. Angela was overwhelmed by the attention, but firm in her decision. "He's not going anywhere. He saved my daughter. He saved me. He belongs with us." It wasn't long before the hospital board approved a temporary exception to their rules. Hope was allowed to remain on the premises as long as needed, until Angela and Lily were discharged. Nurses took turns walking him. Kids from the pediatric ward came to see him daily. He became a symbol of healing, not just for the baby he saved, but for everyone who walked through those hospital doors. One nurse even placed a small handmade sign on his resting spot near the maternity wing. It read, "Security team member, Hope, specialty miracles." Hope didn't know he was famous. He didn't know the world had fallen in love with him. All he knew was that he had found something he was never looking for: a purpose and a family. 1 week later, the sun finally shone bright over the quiet town. The storm had passed, the roads were clear, and Mercy Hospital had returned to its usual rhythm. But for those who had witnessed what happened, life would never feel the same. The day had come for Angela and her baby, Lily, to go home. Doctors gave the green light. Nurses hugged Angela tightly. Some wiped tears. But the real moment everyone was waiting for was whether the hero dog, now known to the world as Hope, would follow. He didn't disappoint. As Angela was wheeled toward the exit with Lily in her arms, Hope trotted beside her wheelchair. Not ahead, not behind, just beside, as always like a silent shadow. Crowds had gathered outside the hospital. Neighbors, reporters, children holding handmade signs that said things like, "Thank you, Hope," and "Hero Dog." There was cheering, clapping, even a few tears as Angela stepped out of the building that had become her shelter and saw what the community had done. Waiting near the curb was a small welcome home setup. Balloons, donated baby supplies, and a Legion collar with a tag that simply read, "Hope, the one who carried love." Angela picked it up and looked down at the German shepherd who had saved her child. "Would you like to come home, boy?" Hope looked at her, tilted his head slightly, and wagged his tail. It was settled. From that day forward, Hope became part of their family, not just in spirit, but in every way. Angela had a small house with a fenced yard, and the neighbors helped fix it up. Donations paid for a full vet check, new dog bed, toys, and enough dog food to last a year. Hope slept next to Lily's crib every night. He'd wake up when she stirred and alert Angela with a quiet bark. As Lily grew, so did their bond. She took her first steps holding on to Hope's fur. Her first word wasn't mama or dada. It was ho. That video went viral too. Over time, the world moved on, but the town didn't forget. Mercy Hospital installed a small bronze plaque in the lobby near where Hope had first entered. It showed the silhouette of a dog carrying a bundle in his mouth, and below it, the words, "In honor of Hope," who reminded us that heroes don't always wear uniforms. And as for Hope, he never sought attention, never cared for flashing lights or headlines. He only cared about two things: the little girl he had carried through the storm, and the mother who gave him a name that matched exactly what he had brought with him that morning. Hope,